No, those houses were there.
Right.
So we were kind of in the woods.
Oh, I see. I see. Right there, so I can just record what we say, and that's all I have to do. Just do that. Well, thank you very much for doing this. You've seen the show, I take it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm flattered.
I've been doing it about a year and a half now.
Yeah.
And I know you're a member of the Ben Shot At group.
Yes.
That's how I got your name.
Yeah.
And are y'all still meeting at Denny's on what, Monday mornings?
We met this morning.
Did you?
Yeah.
Did you tell them I was going to come see you?
No, I didn't. I didn't say anything about it.
Oh, okay. I've been sort of on hiatus here for a little bit because they over at A&M where we tape the show, they've been on they were on vacation. You know, they were out. Their students were out that works with the show, and then they just got back. And then last week we didn't do a show, so I haven't done a show in about a month or so.
Really?
So I haven't taped a show. We're taped pretty far ahead of time.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, the show that you and I taped this week probably won't be on until middle of February, probably something like that. So we're about 5-6 weeks ahead is what we are right now. So that's good. Well, I know you were in the Air Force, right? Mm-hmm. And were you in Korea or where were you?
I was in Vietnam.
In Vietnam?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me just about sort of before your service. Give me a little biography of yourself, sort of bring it up. You're an A&M grad?
Right.
Okay.
I was raised in Somerville.
Okay.
Graduated from Somerville High School in '56.
You're a Yewa. Okay.
Right.
All right.
I played football, and I was on the basketball team. I didn't play much, but I was on there. You did Lewis Hudson.
Right.
He was my principal when I was in grammar school.
Is that right?
Yes.
Spanked him too.
He spanked me.
He spanked you.
He won't claim it, but he did. He's one of my heroes.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, Lewis's show is going to be repeated here in a couple of weeks, as a matter of fact.
Great.
Yeah, his show's going to be a repeat here.
He was also my scoutmaster.
Is that right?
Yeah. And he is the brother-in-law of my A&M roommate.
I'll be darned.
So a lot of connections.
How about that? Boy, what a story he had.
Oh,
My goodness,
yeah. Like I say, he was one of my heroes.
Jumping over Normandy and then...
him and Boots Simmons. I don't know if you know who Boots Simmons is.
I've heard the name, yeah.
He played football at A&M.
Uh-huh.
He was wounded in World War II. His son, he coached at Temple for years. In fact, he's crippled.
Right.
His son went to Texas and played football for Texas and then played for the Cleveland Browns. I don't know if he ever played for anybody besides the Browns.
Right.
But he was a good football player, but he got really messed up in the war.
Right.
But him and Lewis Hudson, Dwight Look, they were all Somerville guys, and and I was about 7 years old when they came home from the war. So these guys were really my heroes, and I thought that's what I want to be like when I grow up.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I went to school in Somerville, and then I came over to A&M, and I was in the Air Force ROTC, and graduated from A&M in '60 and went right into the Air Force. I went to pilot school, and I washed out of pilot school after about 9 months, and then I went to navigator school down in Harlingen. I was in pilot school in Florida, and then Big Spring. Then I went down to Harlingen for navigator school, and I got through there in February of '62, and our whole class, which I've got a picture of on here.
This is your navigator school?
My navigator class. There wasn't very many of us.
Right.
Yeah, here it is. Every one of us except one had washed out of pilot school.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So y'all became navigators?
Yeah. That's me, right there.
Right there, the tallest one, of course.
And from there, all of us except I think one or two went to bombardier school at Mather. And the one guy went to a radar officer school at James Conley in Waco.
Right.
We finished bombardier school in November of '62, and normally what you do when you get through with that is you go to SAC in bombers.
Strategic Air Command.
Yeah. Not one of us did. SAC was just phasing out their B-47s, and all their B-47 navigators were going into B-52, so they had more navigators than they needed.
Right.
So almost all of us went to Travis Air Force Base, which is only about 70 miles from Mather. Mather's in Sacramento. Travis is between Sacramento and San Francisco.
I see.
And I went into C-135s
Right.
at Travis, as opposed to KC-130. KC-135s are the tankers.
Uh-huh.
We were in cargo C-135s. And that was just the beginning of the public's knowledge of the Vietnam War. And so most of our missions were flying passengers and cargo to Vietnam. That was
This was 63? 62. Okay.
late 62.
Late 62.
And then I really got checked out in 63.
Uh-huh.
We were flying, we flew global cruise. So we had 2 navigators and 3 pilots. In fact, one of our co-pilots, or one of the pilots, you know Charlie Bankston? Here in town, he's a stockbroker, does...
Oh, yeah, yes, I sure do know.
He was one of my,
Yes, I do.
he was one of the pilots in my squadron when I was at Travis.
Right.
It's a small world.
I'll be darned.
And he's a Texas graduate.
Uh-huh.
So we conversed about that a little bit, me and him in Texas.
Yeah.
Anyway, I did that. We were flying, like I say, we flew global cruise, 2 navigators, 3 pilots. We had 27-hour crew duty days.
Cool.
So we would take off from Travis, which is, just this side of San Francisco.
Right.
We would fly to Hickam in Hawaii, which was about a 5-hour flight.
Right.
We'd refuel, and it take about 2 hours, and then we'd fly to the Philippines, which was about a 10 or 11-hour flight. We'd get off, give our airplane to another crew. They would fly to Saigon or Da Nang or somewhere in Vietnam, and then up to Japan, and they'd give their airplane to another crew, and they'd fly it either back or back home. And we call that, I don't remember what we called it, staging. We called it staging. We'd have a crew, as soon as an airplane landed, there'd be a crew ready to take it off.
Right.
And the other crew would go into crew rest. Anyway, I did that from 60 till 1965. In the spring of 65, I got assigned to the hurricane hunters down in Puerto Rico. We were flying C-130B models, and it was a brand new. They'd never penetrated hurricanes with a C-130 before, so it was a brand new deal. We were just a detachment, so we had, I think there were 9 navigators. I was a young captain, and I wasn't the senior guy, but I was the second senior guy. The senior guy, they made the Stand-Val guy, the standardization guy, and I was the sort of the daddy navigator. And so, I was charged with everything that went wrong with navigators. And we did that 3 years, which was, very interesting. I could talk about flying into hurricanes a lot.
Yeah.
Interesting, it's the power of nature,
Right.
I've seen all kinds of things. I mean, I never thought I'd ever see. We flew a lot in the Sargasso Sea, which is known as the Devil's Triangle.
Right.
And it just looks funny down there. I mean, I can't explain it, but it just looks funny. It looks like no other water that I ever saw anywhere else in the world. I mean, there's all this. You've heard of the Ancient Mariner,
Yes.
When they got tangled up in the. Well, it's there. I mean, you can see the seaweed. It's kind of an orange, reddish, brownish, and it just goes on for miles. You can see it, and the water is very smooth, which is unlike the Atlantic Ocean, which is usually pretty rough. And we, like I say, we were flying weather reconnaissance. Most of the time we were just doing weather reconnaissance, but when a hurricane came up, we sort of went into a different mode, and we just go home and they would call us, and we kept an airplane in there just about all the time. What we'd do is we split it with the Navy. The Navy would take a fix at like midnight Zulu time, which is Greenwich Mean Time, and then another one at 0600 Greenwich time, and then they would leave, and then we'd come in and take one at 12 Zulu and midnight Zulu again, and then they'd come and get 6 and 12. And we'd do that until the hurricane died, went way north and missed the coast, or went into the, made landfall. Once it made landfall on the mainland, we pulled out. I did that for 3 years, actually for 4 hurricane seasons, because I got there in May of '65, and I left in August of '68.
Are there one or two of these flights that particularly come back to your mind, just thinking that maybe I should have gone into another line of work?
Every time we did it at night.
Oh, yeah.
At night, in the daytime it's not too bad, because you can...
You know your enemy.
Yeah, and you can't see the lightning so much. But in the nighttime, that lightning, it's constant. I mean, it never quits. I mean, it's going all the time. And, also in the Ancient Mariner, they talk about St. Elmo's fire on the mast. Well, you'd get that phenomenon. And it gives you the willikers. I mean, it just really, I remember the first time I'd ever seen it. I'm sitting out there navigating, and I think the aircraft commander says, "Durwood, you ought to come up here and take a look at this." So I walked up there and, oh, good grief. The wings were glowing, the props were glowing, with this eerie green, ghostly looking. I mean, it kind of outlined the airplane. I mean, it was really. We were in weather, and it really, it kind of reflected onto the. Because we're in the clouds, it was reflecting on the clouds, and I mean, it's scary. It really. I mean, you got to. At least I did. I had to tell myself, this is natural. God's not coming down to get us. And and then this was not one of those times when you had the constant lightning, because St. Elmo's fire occurs when you have a static electrical charge on the airplane.
Right.
And it's hitting all that moisture, and that charge discharges on the airplane. There's phenomena where they call it ball lightning. It'll actually get in the airplane. It'll roll down the aisle. It's crazy stuff. But probably the one of the more interesting ones, they sent us to the Pacific because of the guys in Guam, all their airplanes went in maintenance. And so we flew into some typhoons. And, those really get big. Yeah. Because the Pacific Ocean is so large. Right. We picked one up that was east of Guam, and we followed it all the way. It actually crossed over the Luzon Island in the Philippines, and we were in it when it did that. Right. And then it finally, I think it hit China. We couldn't get, Red Chinese didn't like us flying that close to them, so we kind of withdrew when it got a little close to China. Right. But we followed it, I forget how many thousand miles. I still remember the name of the storm. It was Victoria. Victoria. Yeah. And but I can't. They were all sort of memorable, but it's kind of all jammed together. Sure. But,
that's a good explanation. So you did this for 4 hurricane seasons.
Right.
Then what?
Then I got an assignment back to Travis Air Force Base.
In California?
Yeah, flying C-141s, doing primarily what I'd done before, only when I was in C-135s, they were the only jet transport unit on the West Coast. So primarily what we did was fly VIPs. We were kind of an extension of that VIP squadron that's at Andrews Air Force Base, flies the president. So we were flying a lot of generals, and my squadron took the Bob Hope thing out to the Pacific all the time during the Vietnam.
Really?
That was 1968 when I got back, and the only thing that was really different about the 141s was in 1968 we were taking a lot more casualties in Vietnam. So what we'd do is we'd configure, go to the Philippines with cargo, and then when we got to the Philippines they would reconfigure their airplanes and they'd become air-evac, and we'd go over usually to Cam Bay. That's where we flew most of our air-evac missions out of, because I think there was a big hospital there. And some of them we went into Saigon. I don't remember going into Da Nang too many times. We went a few times. I went into Phuket, Da Nang, a few of those other places. But the war kind of came home to you when you're taking casualties home. And some of them were really in bad shape. In fact, some of them I don't even know if they made it. We would take them up to Japan, and it's not like Iraq. I think in Iraq they stabilize them and they send them directly back to Germany. And I think in Germany they do all the things they have to do to them before they bring them home.
Right.
In those days, they had the big hospital in Cam, so I think they did a lot of care. And I think they'd make a determination if the guy could be returned to duty or they're going to send him home. And most of the time, I think they sent him home if they were wounded. That really, I felt like, I don't know if I want to make this, but I felt like I was up against the wall there. All I was doing was I was navigating, and it was no longer a challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd done it so much. I don't know what you know about navigation, but primarily we were using STARS, LORAN, which is long range air navigation, which is an electronic thing, and pressure pattern. But by this time I'd done so much of it, especially when I was in hurricane hunters, because we had no nav aids out there. It was all celestial and pressure pattern. So I felt like I was too skilled to be doing what I was doing.
Right.
And it was kind of my career path, plus I just didn't feel like I was doing what I ought to be doing. So one day I walked out of the squadron, and I'd been there 2.5 years, and I was flying 110 hours a month, every month, and I was just tired, and I was gone all the time. And one day I walked out of the squadron, and there was 2 fighters sitting out on the ramp, and I was just kidding with somebody. I said, "Wonder how you get in those things?" And whoever I was with said, "Well, you got to be crazy." I said, "Well, I qualify." So I went back in the squadron and I made a telephone. I was in Military Airlift Command. I called Military Airlift Command Personnel Headquarters and I said, "How do you get in F4s?" The guy said, "Oh, we're looking for guys." And I said, "Well, I'm your man." And they said, change your dream sheet. I don't know if anybody's talked about the dream sheet, but that's what you want to do and, what your career goals are and all that. And they said, fill it out, put that on there that you're volunteering and send it to us. So I did. And on a personal note, it's about the same time my brother got real sick. He was also an Aggie, class of '66, and I had to go home on emergency. He died eventually at 27. Really tragedy. And while I was gone, they called my wife and said, "Hey, when does I was a major. When does Major Lewis want to leave? Does he want to leave in 3 weeks or 6 weeks?"
That's news to me.
Yeah, she didn't. I don't know if she knew about it. And so she, when I got home, she said, I got a call from, I forget who. I think it was MAC personnel. And she said, what are you going to tell them? I said, I'm going to tell them 6 weeks. So 6 weeks later, we were shipped out to what they call RTU, Replacement Training Unit, at MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa. So we drove from Travis Air Force Base, California, came through Texas and visited, and then went on and got there in April of '71, and it was they didn't have an exact length of the course. You flew so many sorties and so many missions, and when you got done, you got done. But it was about a 6-month deal, and we finished up in early November of '71. And at some point in there, they asked, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I want to go to Vietnam."
Right.
And she, my wife was, she wasn't for it, but she didn't, That's another thing that I don't know if anybody's told you this. They're as much in this stuff as we are.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Maybe more so.
Right. Right.
And they have to always know that they're second.
Right.
And accept it.
Yeah.
And you miss Christmases and birthdays and anniversaries and all these good stuff that people take for granted, kind of.
Right.
And so, I told her, and she kind of, okay. I said, it's just a year. So then we had to decide, what to do with the family while I'm gone. I hadn't even had my assignment yet, but I knew what it was going to be. And so they stayed in, her folks live in San Angelo. So we camped them in San Angelo while I was in Southeast Asia. But anyway, MacDill was an interesting deal too. We had, I don't know if you may be interested in this or not, but in those days, I wouldn't want this to be on the air, but the Air Force was more concerned with safety than they really were in training combat air crews. So our training was not as realistic. In other words, we didn't take the airplanes to the limits. We had very huge buffers between what the airplane would actually do in terms of performance and where we took it. It wouldn't make any sense to you if I told you these units, but it was a considerable difference between where the airplane could go and where we could take it during training. So in that regard, our training, I think, was deficient. I wouldn't want to say that, but that was just the environment we were in those days in the Air Force. That has changed. Yeah. It's changed drastically because of Vietnam. And but we did have one crew. They lost an airplane, had to bail out almost over the base in Tampa Bay. In fact, both of them went into Tampa Bay. Same two guys, 2 weeks later, had to bail out again.
Oh my goodness.
So, that was the only serious incident that we had in our whole 6 months in fighters, which, I had a picture of fighters always having emergencies. I had one the whole time I was in it. We lost our, you actually have three hydraulic systems. You got your, what they call PC1 and PC2. Both of those drive the controls. Then you have another hydraulic system that controls the brakes, nose wheel steering, the radar dome, that sweeps the radar, and all these. That's why they call it utility hydraulic system. Well, I lost the utility hydraulic system, so we had to drop our hook when we hit the runway, and we had no brakes. Essentially, we just let the airplane,
Right.
come to a stop, and we jumped out of it. But that was the only thing that even remotely, except for those two guys having to bail out. Almost all of us. This is that class. Almost all of us went to Southeast Asia, and I think we got out of that class. I didn't get any, but I think we got 3 or 4 MiGs.
Was this taken in Florida?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
A bunch of good guys. One of them's an astronaut. There's a guy with a mustache. I can't see it.
Right here? That guy has a mustache.
No, it's not him.
This guy's mustache.
That's the one. He was
Okay.
an astronaut.
Okay. What's his name? You recall?
I can't remember it.
Okay.
It's been
Where are you?
30-something years. Right there.
Okay.
Brazos.
We're excited.
Yeah.
So these were all had been trained in the F4.
Right.
Yep.
Well, some of them had just come out of pilot school.
Right.
In fact, my front seater there, his name was Steve. I can't remember Steve's last name. Anyway, he was a Air Force Academy graduate and just finished pilot school, and they put him right in the fighters. He didn't go to Vietnam. He later on, I don't know, he went to Europe, and then he ended up at test school. He's a test pilot, as far as I know, still.
Yeah. So you were an F4 pilot in Vietnam?
Backseater.
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 Yeah.
They call them, formal name is WSOs.
Right.
Weapons Systems Officer. We called each other Gibbs, guy in the back seat.
Yeah.
And
It's a very technical term.
yeah.
Gibbs.
Very descriptive too. And it's kind of an interesting thing. Fighter pilots, by and large, are a different kind of cat. I don't know if you've met Bob Pardo.
Yes, sir.
Bob Pardo's. I'd say he's even more typical than a typical fighter pilot, because he's a real tiger. And a real hero too, by the way.
Right, absolutely. Oh yeah. Pardo's Bush is one of my favorite stories that were told.
It's absolutely.
Now you all have another fellow in your group that was a backseater, the one that was a
POW.
POW.
Al Meyer.
Al Meyer, yeah. Yeah, he was a backseater, right?
He was a classmate of mine at A&M.
Right, okay.
Actually, Al and I crossed paths so many times. When I was in Bombardier School, he was in EWO school at Mather. Both of us were at Squadron Officer School in '64, and then somewhere else we crossed. I can't remember where it was, but of course, we were classmates at A&M, and there was a couple of guys he was from Fredericksburg, and there was a couple of guys from Fredericksburg in my outfit. He used to come over and see him all the time.
Yeah.
Good guy.
Right.
And, his wife was one of those, you just don't find better wives than she was. All the time he was a POW, she was working, trying to get him, bring some attention to that situation.
Yeah, like 6 years or something.
Yeah.
Was there. Yeah. So you were over there in the F4 for just one tour for 1 year?
One tour.
And
I went over in December of '71. And
what were most of your missions?
Well, we had a different. Most of my missions in North Vietnam we flew as escort. We would escort the bombers, the guys that were dropping bombs.
Right.
And we also flew. I flew a lot of bombing missions myself. I flew some CAP, combat air patrol missions. That was mainly what we flew in North Vietnam, but I did a lot of bombing in Cambodia. Well, not a lot in Cambodia, but some. A lot of bombing in Laos and South Vietnam. I was there when the spring offensive started in '72, in April of '72. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, Bat 21.
No, I haven't seen that.
Colonel Hamlin was down for I forget how many days in North Vietnam. He was 50 years old, and the Air Force and the Army lost think 13 or 14 men were killed trying to get him out.
Mm-hmm.
And they finally got him out. A Navy SEAL swam up a river and got him out. And I think he got a Medal of Honor for it. I'm not sure. But I flew up a couple of those missions up there trying to get him out of there.
Mm-hmm.
But that's when, of course, the North Vietnamese came through the DMZ. They also came down the trail, and they laid siege to a little place called An Loc. And I flew a bunch of missions down there, dropping bombs and napalm and on them. In fact, sometimes we'd fly double sorties. We'd take off. I was stationed at Korat in Thailand. We'd take off from Korat, fly a bombing mission, land at Saigon, refuel and rearm, and take off and drop bombs again, and then go home. Or sometimes we'd go back to Saigon and fly three sorties in one day. I tell you, some other missions that I flew were kind of interesting. We flew some what we call SAM strike teams. We would go out and try to kill SAMs. You know, Al Meyer was a wild weasel, and that was their primary job. Was we had a wild weasel squadron at Korat, and they had these radar homing missiles that would home in on the SAM radar. You know what a SAM is, don't you? Surface to air missile.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And I went up there one day. One of these. This is the mission that I can remember more than any other mission I flew. Well, there's 2 or 3 of them I can really remember, and this is one of them. We'd been fragged. That's, you know, the operations order to bomb a target in southern North Vietnam. And, you know, we briefed for it and went out to the airplanes, and they came out and said the weather's bad, so you're not going. But they put us on what they called QRF, Quick Reaction Force. So we're just sitting around the squadron thinking we got nothing to do all day. And about, I guess, 9 o'clock in the morning, they came and said, get off, you know, take off as quick as you can. You know, what for? They got a target for you. So we jumped in our airplane. It was already cocked. We started the engines. We didn't know what our target was. We're in an airplane, don't know what our target is. And our ops officer, Von Christensen, crawled up the ladder, and he had some pictures. And he handed me the picture. I was flying with my squadron commander, Roger Myram. And he gave me the picture, and he says, this is your target. You know, it was a SAM site. And I'm looking at, you know, trying to get the coordinates, and I'm doing my flight planning back in the back seat, doing all my other pre-flight stuff. And the airplane, you know, one of our airplanes aborted. We were a flight of 4. One of them aborted. Something was wrong with the airplane. We took off, and Colonel Myram, once we got airborne, he says, take the airplane. So I started flying. He said, let me see those pictures. You know? So I had to pass them up. I mean, it's not easy to do, to pass those pictures up. And I flew the airplane while he was studying the target. He had to know where it was, you know what it looked like. And while we were doing that, I discovered the throttle linkage was loose, and I could advance the throttle, but I couldn't retard it. So every time I wanted a little more throttle, I'd have to tell him to give me throttle. So we hit the tanker, we're refueling, and every time, you know, there would be 3 of us. You could only refuel one at a time. While one was refueling, we'd be over on the wing, and Colonel Myram was studying the pictures, and I was flying the airplane on the tanker. And you know, every time we'd start sliding back a little, I could advance the throttles, but when we'd start sliding forward, you know, I'd say take one off. You know what I mean? He'd take it off. So it was, you know, really coordinated. You know, it was just one of those deals. You know, we didn't need any more heartbreak for that day. And so we went it was the target was in a place we call the Fingers Lake region in southern North Vietnam, kind of a remote area, and the target was hard to find. So we really had to concentrate, trying to find this thing. And we were flying down this road. That's an exaggeration in North Vietnam roads. They're dirt, and they're clay. And there was a road that kind of ran along a little small river. And we're really concentrating because, like I say, we haven't studied the target except in the air. And I got a SAM warning light. I said, I got a SAM warning light. And he said, right, he just acknowledged me. And I said, okay. And he kept flying the airplane. And all of a sudden, we had a warning. When a SAM is fired, until it's fired, all the information that the radar is giving it is coming by a ground line. When the missile takes off, the booster falls off. When the booster falls off, an antenna pops up, and the radar is now feeding via radio. So when that happens, we get a warning, a launch. It's called a launch light. And I yell, I got a launch light, I got a launch light. Well, the procedure at that point is you start looking for it. You don't know where it is, so we're looking. The worst scenario if it's behind you.
Yeah, coming up.
And so, I made a quick scan and I picked it up. It was at about 12:30. I said, I got a SAM at 12:30. It's guiding, which was telling him it's on us. And he didn't. All he said was he just kind of grunted or something, not what I wanted to hear. And I kept watching this thing, and we're still, every time an airplane moves, that missile was just like that. I could see the fire out the tail. I could see where it had been launched from because there was a big dust cloud. And I says, Colonel, it's still guiding. And he kind of grunted again. And then I said, it's still guiding. I was getting kind of frantic then. And it was getting real close, and I couldn't stand it any longer. So I ducked because it looked like it was coming right through the windscreen and hit me between the eyes. So I ducked, and about that time, he grabbed, he reefed, he pulled about 7 or 8 G's. And of course, when my head's now 7 times its weight, so I just went down. I thought he'd broken my neck. I couldn't move, and he was, and about that time, the bloom, it went off. And I heard somebody yell, "Lead, you're hit." And I was thinking, no kidding. And when he finally got off the G, I looked back and I could see the black smoke of my airplane, and I could see the detonation, and our black smoke went right through it. So I started looking around, looking for a fire warning light or something. Nothing. All I had was my jamming pod, which blinks when it's working, wasn't blinking. That was the only indication I had in the cockpit. And I said something to the Colonel. I said, we're hit. He said, yeah, we're hit. Something like that. I'm thinking, I'm not getting enough reaction out of this guy. He's a lot calmer about all this than I am. And I'm thinking, we're going to have to bail out of this thing. I never thought from the whole time I was going to get hurt or killed. But I distinctly thought we were going to have to bail. In fact, before it hit us, I put my hand on there's 2 ejection handles. There's one between your legs, and there's another one above your head, and I grabbed them both because I thought I was going to be going for a ride. But I wasn't going to leave until, there was something that tells me that airplane was not going to fly anymore. And, when we got out of that, everything was going, and he says, do you see the target yet? And I said, I called him something, but I see the son of a bitch that shot us. Let's kill him. And he said, no, we're going to hit our target. He's a lot better soldier than I was. So he said, I've got it. and we went ahead and rolled in, which I thought was, this kind of, we don't know how bad we're hit. So we rolled in on our target, we dropped our bombs, and we exited. And I think we're taking AAA too. Yeah, we were. They were getting shit. They were shooting at us too. So, we get out of the area, and I'm really getting a little concerned about this airplane, And so, our wingman comes up and checks over. So we just got holes, and it's nothing leaking or anything like that. We just got holes. So we flew over U-Bahn Air Base, which normally when you're hit, you're going to land at the closest base. We went ahead and flew on back to Crot, and they made a big deal out of us getting hit by SAM. But I was one of the few guys that I knew that took a hit from a SAM and flew back.
Yeah.
I mean, usually that was catastrophic.
Sure.
But anyway, that was an interesting one. And one other one that I flew
So
on.
when you landed, you inspected yourself. Where,
Oh, yeah.
where had you been hit?
It had been hit mostly in the tail, and we still had our bombs when it hit us, so we surmised that the bombs took most of the frag. Luckily, it didn't set them off or anything, but
Yeah.
but
Did the plane perform okay? I mean, did it?
oh yeah,
Was
it flew like a beauty. And,
Yeah.
in fact, I still remember the tail number of the airplane. It was 311. It was, they put your name on an airplane, and mine was on 322, and the guy that handed me the pictures, it was his airplane. I mean, he kind of gave us a hard time about getting his airplane messed up. But it was only out of service, I think, like a week.
Yeah.
They just, patched the holes and everything. Wow. I was on another one, and this same guy, Von Christensen, we were escorting some chaff bombers. These are guys that drop this tinfoil. A strike package. I know I'm talking more than you want to hear.
No, you're not. No, this is.
A strike package is kind of consists of a lot of guys doing all kinds of jobs. There was the tankers, of course, were refueling everybody. The combat air patrol was the first one in. They would patrol over the target to protect the strike force from MiGs. There was the chaff bombers would go in and drop this tinfoil to mess up their radars. So, and you'd fly through the chaff, to the target. Then there was the strike aircraft. The Wild Weasels would go in and suppress the SAMs about the same time as the combat air patrol went in. Then the chaff bombers would go in, dropping this chaff, and they had escorts. Usually there'd be 4 chaff bombers dropping chaff, and then there'd be 2 fighters on each side of them. Well, that was usually a good, if you were a fighter guy, that's what you wanted to fly, because the MiGs really went after those chaff bombers for some reason. And we were flying one of those. That was in June of '72. And we kept getting these MiG calls. We had this airborne command post. They had some kind of magic stuff. They could tell where these MiGs were. And, they were giving us, and I'm looking at my map, and where they're telling us these MiGs are, they're about 4 miles to our right. Well, 4 miles when you're flying 600 miles an hour, and you're closing at 1200, that's not very long. So you're flying, just too long at 9 nautical miles a minute. So, every 8 seconds, I guess, or 7 seconds, you're going a mile. So I'm really, we're really getting concerned, and we're on that side of the bombers. And then we didn't get a call for a while, and all of a sudden, my front seater, I've got a picture of here, says, I got we had a code for these MiGs. MiG 19 was a red bandit. MiG 17 was a red bandit. MiG 19 was a white bandit, and a MiG 21 was a blue bandit, red, white, and blue. And he said, I've got a blue bandit 10 o'clock high. I'd been flying missions over there. I'd heard MiG calls. I had never seen a MiG. He said, I've got a MiG. He said, I've got a blue bandit 10 o'clock high. And I looked up, and there he was. I mean, he was turning. And he looked like we couldn't turn like that. I mean, he was turning so hard. And then I lost him back up here. And we got to stay with the bombers, these chaff bombers. So I'm thinking, well, we're dead. We're gone. He's going to get us. So I'm really just about breaking my neck, looking over my shoulder, trying to find that sucker. And all of a sudden, he's right here. Mm. He flew right by us. He was doing about 1.2. We were doing about 9.5 Mach. And he kind of goes right by us like this, and I can see his goggles. I mean, I can see him. He doesn't see us. He went right by. I mean, I could see in this detail, but he didn't see us. He was so focused on those chaff bombs. Well, we're pushing the Mach, that's the hardest point to accelerate. And he's already at 1.2, so we're trying to accelerate, and he's going on by us. Well, he immediately shot down one of the chaff bombers. I mean, he got him like that. And Von Christensen, who was flying number 3, he was right here, we were right here. He fired a missile at the leader and knocked him down. About that time, the second one came, and Christian didn't even know he'd hit the other one, and he immediately went after the other one. We're in a dogfight, and we're flying down the Red River. In fact, I took some. This is when it started. I took this picture right when it started.
Yes, sir.
And the MiG, he knew he was in trouble, so he immediately rolled over and started for the deck. And he's rolling and barrel rolling, and I mean it's beautiful. If it had been in any other circumstance, so we're falling. We're doing all this stuff, flying along the Red River, and they're shooting at us from the ground. And I mean, I'm laying there. I mean, not laying there, but I'm looking upside down at the Red River, and I'm thinking, I was in those safe 141s, and how all of a sudden I'm out here. I wonder what I did. Anyway, we chased that guy, the second one, all the way to Hanoi, and we got short on fuel. So we had to turn back. I had him locked up. I had him on my radar and locked up, ready to fire. And somebody called that they needed, we had to get back to the tanker, and I thought we'd shoot at him before we left. Well, we didn't. We just turned, and I figured, when we turned, he was going to be on us, but he was evidently as short of fuel as we were, so he landed. But that was one of my our call sign. I don't know if you've ever seen this movie, The Hunters. It's an old Korean War movie with Robert Mitchum. He was a fighter pilot, and he was kind of an old World War II throwback. And when he got to Korea, they kind of gave him a test to see if he could hack it. He goes up there and really, shows him his stuff, and his commander, when he's landing again, he says, "The Iceman cometh." Our call sign that day was Iceman. Uh-huh. So in fact, I used to have some pictures that I'd taken, and I'd written Iceman on the canopy so I could remember our call sign. And sometimes you had a different one yesterday, and you'll have a different one tomorrow. So
right.
I wanted to remember it, and we actually had to go back. We went to the tanker, and of course we had some guys down that were in that chaff bomber, so we tried to go back, and I think we may have gone back 3 times, and we never could raise them on the radio. It was dark, and we finally went back to the tanker for the last time, and then went home. Yeah. And it's interesting because when you go home, you find out who was in the airplane. Well, there was a guy, and his name was Lewis. And they never came up on the radios. They both came back. Both guys came back, and I remember reading in the Air Force Times that I think it was Lewis was the first one to recheck out in fighters after coming back, being a POW.
Oh, yeah.
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 But that was I was in we had two fighter squadrons at Karat. I was in the 469th, and of course we considered ourselves the best squadron.
Sure.
And Von Christensen was the DO. The operations officer, Roger Myron, was the squadron commander. Both of them ended up full colonels. Out of that squadron, there was 3 became general officers. 1 4-star. In fact, I took that guy on his first mission as a first lieutenant. His name is Greg Martin. And then I was stationed. He was also at. When I left Karat, I came back to Holloman in New Mexico, and he was at Holloman also. But you know, that was we had about 12 crews, maybe 14, to flee these missions. Mostly we were escort. Once we started striking the north, you know, I don't know if you remember, but when the offensive started, we were not on a regular basis striking North Vietnam.
Right.
We were doing those, what they call those protective reaction strikes, and I'd made several of those. But we'd never been to Hanoi. The other one that I remember is my first mission to Hanoi. That was on April the 16th of '72. You know, to make a long story short, the thing that I remember the most about it was the target was the Hanoi POL, petroleum oils and lubricants,
Right.
which was on the east side of town. And so we had to fly. We were attacking from the west, so we had to fly over the whole city of Hanoi. And I remember looking down at Hanoi, and it looked like a sparkler. Every block, they were shooting from every block. I mean, I didn't want to look again.
Wow.
But it was, you know, quite a sight.
Yeah. First time over Hanoi.
Yeah.
So you came back. Your mission was over, and you came back to New Mexico. Is that right?
Yes. Yes. That's another interesting thing, because when I got back, while I was there, I got an assignment. You know, it didn't have where I was going, but it's called a SPCAT, special category, which is either Pentagon or something like that. Well, when I called to find out where I was going, they said your SPCAT assignment's been canceled. I said, okay. They said, you know, the war's going on real heavy now, and so they're going to need you back. So you're going to come home, and then you'll be back in Southeast Asia in 3 months. I said, okay. So when I got my assignment, it was to C-130s at Little Rock, and I just went through the ceiling. I said, no way am I going to see. So that only time I ever fought an assignment, but I finally got it changed, and they sent me to F4s at Holloman Air Force Base. Well, when I got there, we walked into base housing, and I handed them my orders. You know, I want to see if they had a house on base for me. And the lady said, "Oh, Major Lewis, you're the new base budget officer." I said, "No, you got the wrong Major Lewis. I'm Major Lewis, the F4 backseater." She said, "Durwood Lewis?" I said, "What?" She said, "You're the budget officer. Major Moulton wants you to call him as soon as you came in." So, you know, I became the wing budget officer at Holloman Air Force Base. So I did that for 3 years. I flew a little bit while I was there, not much. And then I went to, from there, I went to the budget shop at Systems Command at Andrews. I was in the big, you know, the F-15, the F-16, the E-3, the E-4, A-10. We were the guys at the bean counters for all those big systems. I mean, you know, when I was a budget officer at Holloman, I rounded my budgets off to $100. You know, it'd be a 1,000.9, you know, 900. Well, there, they rounded off to the millions.
Oh my God. Yeah.
You know, I mean, I couldn't.
At Andrews.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that was the big bucks.
Right.
I mean, they were spending billions. I remember signing a budget authorization for the first 5 B1s. It was $1,069,000,000. I remember that number just very well. $1,069,000,000 for 5 airplanes. And then that was after Jimmy Carter canceled the program. But they had already committed to buy those 5. So I was signed a budget authorization for a canceled program for $66 million. I did that 3 years. Really hated it. I was not a good staff officer. And so I got assigned to Alaska, Elmendorf. We had a son that was going to be a senior in high school. Alaska was a 3-year assignment. We did not want to go to Alaska and send our son back to College Station and us be thousands of miles away. So we decided we were going to leave the family in Texas. And then, we go through the same iteration we'd gone through before. Where? And I can't remember who thought of it, but one of us said, what about College Station? So that's where I put the family. I was up there in Alaska for 2 years. Unaccompanied, you had to go for 2 years, so I was up there for 2 years. I went up there as the wing executive officer, which is another staff job, primarily a paperwork. The wing commander did not have a vice commander there, so I was almost like a vice commander. And after about 9 months, they made me the deputy base commander, and so I did that. I don't know what you know about a base commander in the Air Force, but it's almost like being a mayor. You're responsible for the streets and the runways and making sure people mow their lawns and community relations and which I didn't do.
You're really in charge.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was your fault. I told everybody I was in charge of fault. Everything went wrong was my fault. General Scott was the commander of Alaskan Air Command. Later on became superintendent of West Point. He was also the other halfback when Davis was the halfback and Blanchard was the fullback at Army. And I think he also was a descendant of the Scott that was the generals during the Civil War. Yeah. So, interesting guy. I mean, and a good stick. I flew with him a couple of times. He's a good pilot, I also flew with, you ever heard of the Bellevue?
Yes.
The Bellevue was the backseater that was the ace.
Okay, right.
And then after Vietnam, he went to pilot school and became a pilot.
Right.
So I flew with him up in Alaska. It's just, became a small Air Force. And what was really interesting about when I was flying in Alaska I went up there in '78. I came back from Korat in December of '72. By the time I flew the first year I was up there, when I was still a wing exec, I flew. Only about 40% of the air crews in '78 had flown any combat. That's how quick that's lost. In the 60s and 70s, everybody that was in the fighter business had at least one tour, and a lot of them had 2 or 3. But that's how quickly that experience is lost. And you know, I was telling you early on that the training that we got was not up to snuff as far as what you had to encounter in combat. You know, like SAM. When a SAM's in the flight in the air, what you're supposed to do is push the airplane over. You know, you get it, you pick it up, push the airplane over, get as much speed as you can, and you make that missile commit. And it commits, and it commits, and it commits, and it commits, and you can't stand any longer. You pull, and then he can't make that corner. So that's how you defeat him. I mean, it's
Play
nothing.
chicken with it.
Yeah, it is. That's exactly what it's nothing.
Yeah.
It's nothing high tech about it.
Right.
The first thing is you got to find it. You got to see it. You got first. You got to know it. You know, that's the high tech part, is knowing it got launched, and then you got to find it, and then you got to defeat it.
Right.
But the thing that changed was all these guys were so ticked off about, you know, how they were trained, that they started this program called Red Flag at Las Vegas. And that's a direct result of pilots and aircrew just being ticked off about how poorly they were trained for combat. They weren't trained for combat. And it's made a big difference in the Air Force. I think that the Air Force is a much better combat ready than it was because of that.
Right.
So something good came out of that war.
Yeah.
And that's probably the only good thing that came out of it.
So then from Andrews, what?
From Andrews, I went to Alaska.
Alaska.
From Alaska, I had 20 years in when my tour was up in Alaska, and I was going to retire.
Right.
And one of my friends was in personnel there, and he says, where do you want to go from here? And I said, I'm going home. And, you know, the Air Force had changed a lot, you know, in the year, and it just, you know, staff officer was not fun. I did not enjoy it.
Right.
Flying, I loved. So I said, I'm going home. He said, no, where do you really want to go? I said, I'm going home. And he said, no, where do you want to go? I said, Bergstrom. And then I just forgot about it. You know, I was going to put in my papers. And about a week later, he called me and he said, I got your assignment. I said, I don't have any assignment. He said, yeah, you're going to Bergstrom. So I went to Bergstrom. I was at 12th Air Force there. I don't know, you been to the airport there recently?
Yeah, just last week.
You know, when you first go in, there's a round building there.
Right.
It's a hotel now.
Yeah, it's Hilton.
Well, then it was 12th Air Force headquarters.
Right.
And my office was in that building.
I see.
And I did that for 1 year, and then I retired. I got a job at A&M working at the fiscal department. My job was called Assistant for Management Analysis. And I'd just go around and to different organizations on campus and do a kind of a management study, make recommendations. You know, it's one of these kind of guys nobody wants to see come to their office. You know, I'm here to help you, and they said, we're glad to have you. We're both lying.
How long did you do that?
I did it 3 years. And then I went to work at the Development Foundation.
I see.
At that time, Bob Rutledge was running it, and Ken Durham was my boss, and I became a fundraiser.
I see.
And then we kind of, you know, we started that fundraising effort. The first capital campaign was $500 million, and which was big bucks in those days.
What year would this event did you?
I think we started.
86.
Huh?
86.
No, that's when I went to work. I went to work there in '86, and I think we started the campaign like '92
Okay.
or something like that. And we did it for 7 years, and we raised $640 million. I think that's what we actually raised. You know, I mentioned the heroes. One of them was Dwight Look, and he's the one that, you know, made the gift from Guam.
Right.
And I actually went to Guam to visit with him with Rutledge and Jim Palansaur. I forget what year that was, but he made the biggest gift in that campaign.
Right.
But he'd gone to Guam.
And he's got engineering.
Yes, he was a civil engineer.
Or the building named after
The engineering school.
Engineering school.
College of
named after-
Engineering.
Yeah.
Dwight Look College of Engineering.
Right. Right.
So from a Somerville boy,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So we're all proud of that.
Right. Right.
Anyway, I did that. I was the for most of all the campaign. I was the director of college programs. Each college, we had a fundraiser in each college, and I was their supervisor. And then I, after the campaign was over, I became director of development operations, which was kind of a cat and mouse kind of, cleanup kind of deal. And then I retired from that in 2001. So I did it 16 years.
I see. And you've been retired since '01?
Yeah.
And playing golf?
Playing, well, up until recently, I've been practicing golf a lot lately. My game is so bad that I've walked away from.
Does Pardo beat you?
Pardon me?
Does Pardo beat you?
Oh, Pardo can beat anybody. He's good.
I know he is. I know he is.
Yeah.
So tell me about how long have you and Bernice been married?
In June will be 47 years.
I see.
We have two sons.
Uh-huh.
One of them was in the Navy for 13 years.
Right.
Bernice would not let me not say. We also have a grandson that's at West Point. He's a plebe.
Oh, okay.
She wouldn't let me go without saying that.
Uh-huh. He's a plebe at West Point?
Yes.
Did he come down to San Antonio for the football game?
Yes.
Was he there?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah. We got to see him there.
Watched him almost beat us? Yeah,
Yep.
right. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, he's been a big Aggie, all
Yeah.
his life, and when he was thinking about going to West Point, his mother called me, and she had already talked to Bernice and said, Robert is interested in going to West Point, but he doesn't want to do it unless, because he thinks she'll won't approve of it.
Uh-huh.
You want him to go to A&M. I said, so I called him. I said, if you can go to West Point, go to West Point.
Yeah, I'm sure you're very proud. My
Yeah,
goodness.
I mean,
Now you had a son in the Navy. Is this the son of the plebe?
Yes.
Okay.
he's the father of the plebe. Yeah.
I mean the father of the plebe.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
They live over in Lexington.
I see. I see. And what does he do now? Is he still active? Or
No,
is
he got out of the service after 13 years. He
Uh-huh.
got Navy's. They're always gone. I mean, they were gone
Right.
even more than I was.
Right.
And it just wasn't what he wanted to do.
Right. Right.
So he got out, and now he works for, excuse me, the city of Austin. He's a maintenance guy at their. When you're going to Austin on 290,
Mm-hmm.
there's a little beer joint that says "This is it."
Yeah, I've seen it. Uh-huh.
Yeah, there's a
Uh-huh.
road that goes down there. There's a power plant down there,
I see.
and he's the maintenance supervisor at that power plant.
Oh, okay. Okay. And your other son?
My other son works for Fannie Mae in Dallas.
I see.
He's the younger son.
Uh-huh.
He was not interested in the service at all,
Right.
and never wasn't
He's
even
a
in the
finance
Corps.
guy?
Well, his degree was in marketing, and to tell you the truth, I don't know exactly what they do.
He works
Yeah,
for Fannie Mae.
yeah,
Okay. Okay. Well, show me your pictures here.
Okay.
I've seen these over here, and these are what's. Tell me
Okay.
about this one.
Okay, that's Dwight Look,
Right. Uh huh.
and that was the guy that did the engineering, and I can't remember who this is. It's one of the engineering professors, I'm sure.
Uh huh.
And of course, that's fat me.
You've lost quite a bit of weight.
Yes.
Well, because I looked at that and I thought, could that be Dwight? My goodness, how much weight have you lost?
About 40.
Yeah. Well, it looks like you've lost
Yeah.
more than that.
Yeah.
So when was this taken?
That was taken probably in about 98.
I see. Okay. And then
This is
a
this
core
when I
trip?
was a senior.
Uh-huh.
That's me right there at A&M.
Was this a core trip when we played TCU or something?
Yep.
I see. So this would be the fall of '59.
Right.
Because you were class of '60, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And which one are you? Are you right there in the corner?
Right in front.
Right there on the corner, right there
Yeah.
on the.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great picture.
Yeah.
And this is A&M?
Yeah, when I was a junior at A&M, that picture was made. That's when I was a lieutenant. I think right after I graduated from high school.
And this is your
Navigator class.
Navigator class. Is this you?
Yeah, that's when I was at Karat in Thailand. Just about to go on a mission. I mean, we just took a picture.
This is a F4
Yeah.
that you're in front of?
Yeah.
With your bombs there?
Yeah. Those are Mark 82 500-pounders.
And this was your class that...
No, this is my fighter squadron.
Oh, your fighter
at
squad.
Karat.
Oh, okay, okay. Is that you there?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm recognizing you now.
Yeah.
You're tall. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
This is
And
my,
this was your school at Florida.
Yes.
This was your
Yeah.
flight school.
yeah. This is my last combat mission. I just finished my last combat mission.
Was this in Karat too? Or
Yeah.
was this? Uh-huh.
And I took this picture
Wow.
when we were coming back.
Uh-huh.
I was our wingman.
Yeah.
And this is just a picture I had of bombs falling off.
Did you have nose art like this?
Yes. All our airplanes had
Sharks.
sharks teeth.
Uh-huh.
This is a picture I took while we just pulled over the side. They were on a tanker.
Uh-huh.
We were on our way on a mission.
So you were one of the four that had been...
I'm
your-
the other guy.
your wounded-
I took the picture.
You took the picture?
Yeah.
So had you already been fueled?
Yeah.
And you just moved over?
Yeah.
And it was just, I
So we
see.
get the picture. It's a pretty good picture.
Yeah, that's a great picture. That's wonderful.
This is also my last combat mission.
Uh-huh.
Champagne. And I took this picture also when we're coming down initial, about to land. I was happy. That's my last mission. You can see the nose art.
Yeah.
We were the only squadron only wing in Southeast Asia at that point that had shark's teeth on.
Right.
I had just flown my last mission in the Air Force
Uh-huh.
in Alaska.
Okay. So this would be about, what?
That would have been 1980.
80. And this was, you were flying F4s there
we just
too?
gotten out of that airplane.
Right. Where was your base in Alaska? This was
Elmendorf and Anchorage.
in Anchorage, okay. All right.
And this is me and my front seater. I flew most of my combat.
This is your
missions.
Vietnam front seat?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. What's his name?
His name is Guy Atwood.
Do you keep in touch with him?
A little bit
Yeah.
by email.
Right.
We've had two reunions.
You were a big old boy. You filled up that seat, didn't
Yeah, I did. I did. And the back seat is not very big.
you? Yeah, I was gonna say.
So I was pretty cramped up back there.
Yeah. That's good.
This, I'd already shown you that. That's a
Yeah.
picture I took. And there was a picture I had that I wanted to show. Here it is. I don't know if you've ever heard of Fudd Ridge, but this ridge right here
Mm-hmm.
it points at Hanoi.
Mm-hmm.
And in those early strike missions, they would fly down Fudd Ridge,